In the summer of 2008, in a quiet home in Westport, Connecticut, Paul Newman, Hollywood's golden boy, Academy Award winner, and the very definition of American masculinity, lay in his sickbed facing the end of his life. Each afternoon, he would ask for a small Panasonic tape recorder to be placed on the pillow beside him. It wasn't for memoirs, nor for some polished documentary that would one day play on Turner Classic Movies. It was for something far more unsettling, a confession. On those tapes, Newman spoke of 6 hidden relationships with some of the most iconic leading men in Hollywood history, affairs that had shaped, scarred, and haunted him. He described love and longing, but also betrayal, blackmail, and the crushing loneliness of living 2 lives. The public image of a faithful husband and the private reality of a man forced into silence. Why did he keep these secrets buried for decades? And what compelled him to finally speak when his life was measured in weeks, not years? Marlon Brando, the lover who turned affection into a weapon. The first name Paul Newman uttered into that Panasonic tape recorder was one that carried both fascination and dread. Marlon Brando. For Newman, Brando represented the kind of magnetism that could draw every gaze in a room and hold it hostage. Their story began in 1961 at a Beverly Hilton fundraiser. Newman arrived with his wife, Joanne Woodward, every inch the polished gentleman. Brando, by contrast, showed up late, shirt wrinkled, eyes dancing with mischief. He leaned toward Newman and muttered, "I thought you'd be as boring as the papers made you out to be. Turns out you're the only one here who isn't pretending." For a man like Newman, who usually shrugged off flattery, the words landed differently. From that night on, they carved out stolen hours, coffees in Westwood, midnight walks around Silver Lake, spontaneous flights to Palm Springs. But what Newman took as love, Brando treated as theater. Every encounter, every introduction to Hollywood elites was carefully staged. Paul was not a partner in Brando's life, but a prop in a performance designed to keep Brando's name alive in the gossip columns. The ultimate betrayal came in 1965. Paul's tender handwritten letters, words he had never spoken aloud, appeared as hints in a gossip column titled "Love Behind the Lens." Hollywood insiders instantly recognized who it was. Newman never suspected that Brando himself had delivered the envelope to the press, craving scandal to feed his celebrity. The fallout was brutal. Joanne Woodward discovered one of those letters tucked away in a drawer. She didn't scream, didn't accuse. She left only a note. "If you need a place to take shelter, I'm still here. But if you need one more lie, I'm not the person who can help you." Newman spiraled into weeks of isolation, haunted by both his wife's quiet heartbreak and Brando's cold exploitation. In his final recordings, Newman's voice trembled with both rage and sorrow. "I used to believe that if I loved him long enough, he would change. But Brando never changed. He only knew how to turn feelings into tools for survival. And I let him." The affair ended not with a dramatic fight, but with silence. Newman stopped calling, stopped writing, stopped hoping, yet the regret never left him. "I loved him," Newman sighed, "in a way no one should ever love anyone." Steve McQueen, Love as a Weapon of Control. If Marlon Brando was Paul Newman's seduction into chaos, then Steve McQueen was the storm that nearly swallowed him whole. On the tapes, Newman's voice hardened when he recalled their affair. "Steve McQueen, that bastard," he muttered. Not just a man, but a storm of possession and power. Their paths first crossed backstage at the 1956 Photoplay Awards. Newman was already married, already established, while McQueen was still clawing his way out of bit parts and television cameos. But when McQueen looked at him, there was no humility, no deference, only a raw, unguarded hunger. Their fleeting encounters quickly turned into secret rendezvous at the Chateau Marmont. What began as passion soon twisted into something darker. By 1962, rumors were circulating in Confidential magazine about McQueen's close friendship with a male actor in New York. McQueen reacted swiftly. Within a week, he was photographed hand-in-hand with Anne Margaret at a premiere, while Newman was quietly handed a non-disclosure agreement. McQueen's whispered threat was chilling. "You've got a family. Don't let it all come crashing down." McQueen didn't stop at intimidation. Newman later discovered payments McQueen made to a Variety editor, over $15,000, to bury a piece that could have exposed their relationship. The betrayal cut deeper when McQueen mocked him publicly. On the Merv Griffin Show in 1965, when asked about rumors of an obsessed man, McQueen smirked. "Probably just some fan. The kind who sends love letters and knocks on my door at night. Pretty creepy, really." Newman knew exactly who he was talking about. It didn't end there. During the filming of The Towering Inferno in 1973, Newman confronted him backstage. "Why did you turn me into a madman in the eyes of the world?" McQueen only laughed and tossed out a cassette tape, recordings of their most private conversations, confessions, and arguments. Proof that he had been secretly taping Newman for years, ready to destroy him if he ever spoke out. In his final reflections, Newman's words were filled with both sorrow and resignation. "He used love like a knife. Every embrace was another cut, and yet I still couldn't stop coming back." Robert Redford. The light that turned into a shadow. If Steve McQueen was Paul Newman's tormentor, then Robert Redford was the dream that turned to dust. Their story began in 1969 on the Utah set of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. To the outside world, it was Hollywood magic. Newman as the charming Butch, Redford as the cool Sundance, the perfect pairing of two legends. Behind the cameras, however, another story unfolded, one far more intimate. Both men were family men. Newman was 44, settled in Connecticut with Joanne Woodward. Redford was 32, married with 3 young children. And yet, between them grew an undeniable pull. Crew members noticed the subtle gestures, a glance that lingered too long, shoulders brushing just a little too close. One lighting technician remembered spotting Newman late at night, standing at the edge of Redford's balcony, cigarette glowing in the dark, before Redford quietly pulled him inside. Through the 1970s, their relationship continued in shadows, 2 of Hollywood's most famous co-stars by day, secret lovers by night. For Newman, it was love in its purest sense, a hope that one day Redford might hold his hand in public as he did in private. For Redford, it was something to bury. In 1976, Newman nearly changed everything. He arranged to meet journalist Stephen Close, intending to reveal the truth. But hours before the meeting, a call came. Redford's representative warned him, "If you utter one word about it, you'll lose everything." That same evening, anonymous faxes smeared Newman's reputation, painting him as unstable, abusive, even violent. His interview was canceled. Weeks later, tabloids ran thinly veiled stories about a veteran star abandoned by a co-star due to emotional instability. Everyone knew who it meant. The final cut came in 1980 at the BAFTA Awards. A BBC reporter asked Redford if he still kept in touch with Newman. Redford smiled politely. "We made something great together, but everyone has to move on." Then he turned away. Newman, watching from afar, returned home and wrote in his journal, "The man who once called me his light now uses me as his shadow." Their love didn't end with a fight or a farewell. It ended in silence, carefully curated, lasting until Newman's final breath. A silence that may have protected reputations, but broke the man who had once believed in love strong enough to survive the spotlight. James Dean, The Love That Ended in Silence. Of all the names whispered into Paul Newman's final tapes, none carried more tenderness or more regret than James Dean. Their paths first crossed in the spring of 1955 on the Warner Brothers lot. Newman, then 30, was stepping into the lead role of Somebody Up There Likes Me. Dean, just 24, had exploded into stardom with East of Eden. By all accounts, they should have been rivals. Yet the moment Dean looked at Newman, there was no competition in his eyes, only wonder, followed by a smile that kept Newman awake for nights. Their connection was immediate, intimate, and unguarded. They lingered in all-night diners on Ventura Boulevard, took aimless drives in Dean's Porsche 550, and spent afternoons in a cabin rehearsing lines that blurred into whispered confessions. Dean once told him, "I don't need anyone to understand me. I just need you not to pretend when you're with me." Newman answered not with words, but by placing Dean's hand over his racing heart. But beauty in Hollywood rarely survives. That June, a paparazzo captured the two men kissing in a parked car. The photo never surfaced directly, but rumors did, in the Los Angeles Herald-Express, under the headline, "Shadow Lovers of the Silver Screen." Studios moved swiftly. Dean lost contracts, Newman lost roles, and both men were warned that careers could vanish overnight. The pressure crushed Dean. He withdrew from Newman, ignored calls, left letters unanswered. One night, Newman found only a note at his door. "I don't deserve to live if living in your eyes is wrong." Days later, Dean overdosed on sleeping pills. He survived, but the press branded him unstable. Their final chance came in September 1955, when Dean sent Newman one last message. "Mexico City, Friday. If you don't come, I'll understand." Newman bought the plane ticket, even made it to LaGuardia, but fear pulled him back. Weeks later, on September 30th, Dean died in a car crash on a California highway. Newman was inconsolable. He kept silent in public, but family remembered his late-night whispers. "I'm sorry. You should have lived a brilliant life." In his nightstand, until his own death, Newman preserved one fragile reminder of their time together, a faded handkerchief from their last trip, proof of a love cut short and a guilt that lasted a lifetime. Sal Mineo, the gentle healer stolen too soon. By the mid-1970s, Paul Newman was a man unraveling. Years of secrecy, betrayal, and emotional wounds had hollowed him out. Outwardly, he remained Hollywood's polished gentleman, but inside he was drowning. In 1974, at Joanne Woodward's quiet urging, he sought therapy in West Hollywood. It was there, in a waiting room on a rainy afternoon, that he met the man who would briefly bring light back into his life, Sal Mineo. Mineo, once celebrated for rebel without a cause and hailed as the next James Dean, had long since fallen out of favor with Hollywood. Sensitive, fragile, and dogged by rumors about his sexuality, he had retreated from the spotlight. When Newman asked him what he was seeking in therapy, Sal tapped his temple and answered softly, "Not to cure an illness, to cure what they made me believe was an illness." From that moment, a bond began to form. Their connection was unlike anything Newman had known before. There were no grand seductions, no power games, no public betrayals. Just two lonely men walking together after therapy sessions, slipping notes into each other's pockets, and finding comfort in the simple act of being seen. Mineo made Newman feel safe. Safe enough to forget the role of Paul Newman, movie star, and just be a man who didn't have to hide. Plans began to take shape. They dreamed of traveling to Venice in 1976, where Sal hoped to write a screenplay for them both. Two men who discover love in a city sinking underwater. For Newman, it was the first time in years he dared to imagine a future that wasn't defined by secrecy. But that dream never materialized. On February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo was stabbed to death outside his West Hollywood apartment. Police called it a robbery, but Newman knew better. It was the price of daring to live openly. In a tape recording from that summer, his voice cracked. "I thought I was healing him, but it was Sal who healed me. And I never got to say thank you." Montgomery Clift, the love that broke him. The final name Paul Newman whispered into his recorder was also the one that cut deepest, Montgomery Clift. Unlike the chaotic fire of Brando or the toxic storm of McQueen, Monty was different. His love was fragile, almost pleading, expressed not through grand gestures but through letters, handwritten pages stained with tears and ink. For 2 years, Newman secretly treasured those letters, hiding them under his pillow. They weren't filled with declarations of passion, but with raw vulnerability. One line read, "I don't need you to choose me. I only ask that you don't deny my existence." But secrets never stay buried in Hollywood. In 1966, Joanne Woodward discovered the letters. She arrived unannounced on set in Tucson, holding an opened envelope in her trembling hands. There were no accusations, no tears, just a single sentence. "So this is why you haven't slept for 2 years. Days later, one of Monty's letters leaked to the press, igniting headlines. Paul Newman and Monty Clift, the buried truth. Fox executives demanded explanations. Tabloids swarmed, and Joanne left, leaving behind only a note. "If you choose to live in lies, don't drag me down with you." The fallout devastated both men. Monty, suffocated by secrecy, finally told Newman, "I can't live like a shadow." Weeks later, he attempted suicide by swallowing sleeping pills. Though he survived, he refused to see Newman again. The rejection pushed Paul into collapse. Diagnosed with severe anxiety and nervous exhaustion, he quietly admitted himself into a psychiatric clinic under a false name. Even then, he paid lawyers and media teams to erase every trace of the scandal. Their story ended not with reconciliation, but with distance and silence. In 1976, Monty was found dead in his West Hollywood apartment, the victim of a heart attack after years of decline. Newman was left haunted, not just by the loss, but by his own inaction. On tape, his voice was heavy with regret. "I thought I was strong, but I was only a coward who knew how to love." For Paul Newman, Montgomery Clift was not just another secret. He was the final wound, the love that broke him, and the ghost that followed him to the end of his days. In the final weeks of his life, Paul Newman's voice was no longer that of the Hollywood icon, but of a man stripped bare, haunted by regret, weakened by cowardice, yet still capable of love. On those tapes, he did not ask for forgiveness. He only asked not to be forgotten. These confessions remind us that behind every dazzling star lies a human being carrying secrets too heavy to bear. Newman's story is not only about love, but about the cost of silence, how fear of judgment can turn passion into pain, and how even the brightest lives can be dimmed by what is left unsaid. So the question remains, how much of this was truth, and how much was a dying man's memory, blurred by time and sorrow? Perhaps the answer matters less than the lesson, that love denied becomes eternal regret.